Hello and welcome to Gunpladust Memories, a new podcast where we share the joy of Gundam and Gundam model kits. I'm Barry, you might know me as No Stopping Epoch from Twitter, and with me is my co-host, Mr. James Purvis.
Hi everyone, I'm Jim Purvis. You might know me as Let's Hug Bro from Twitter. I'm a Gundam super fan and lover of all things mecha, so yep, excited to be here.
And with us this time is our keen but clueless student in all things Gundam, Mr. Owen O'Donnell, Mecha Gamezilla.
Hello.
That's all you're giving us.
They know me. They know me already.
That's the Mecha Gamezilla persona. There it is, straight in. This is Gundam. You can't have a persona when you're talking about.
You've got mecha in your name, and you're not excited to talk
the
about
man
giant
that doesn't
robots.
like Pacific Rim has mecha.
There it is. It's happening. I suppose I should say, in case anyone's listening who are just Gundam fans and have no idea who I am, I do YouTube videos, and that's what I'm primarily known for. I have about video games, but I've just recently started getting into Gundam, and I've always quite fancied the Gunpla kits that I've seen on shelves, and I think I'd like to give that a go, but I don't know where to start, so that's why I'm here.
This is the reason we're doing a podcast. You very kindly bullied us into doing this podcast.
I'd like to say aggressively encouraged.
A lot of people had asked recently about, because we're quite vocal about Gundam and Gunpla on Twitter. I think we piqued a lot of people's interests, and I think rather than having to have the big sit-down conversation with everyone, it's like, why not make a podcast? And if Gundam and Gunpla is something you want to get into, then hopefully this will be the podcast for you.
But Barry, what is Gundam?
So that's a very good question. What is Gundam? Jim, would you like to?
Sure. Gundam is, well, I guess it's a franchise now about giant robots and sci-fi. It started in 1979. It was kind of pitched as a hard sci-fi anime. At the time, most anime was focused on what are known as super robots, so things like Mazinger Z and Tetsujin 28, which are more, not so focused on the science of giant robots, more just that they're big, powerful machines that can beat up monsters. And the idea was to pitch a show about giant robots that's got some hard roots in sci-fi. Unfortunately, at the time, Bandai were big sponsors of...
I think we're going to be hearing about them a lot.
You're going to be here, yeah, you better get used to hearing a lot about Bandai. But anyway, so the creator of Gundam, Yoshiyuki Tomino, had this idea for a very realistic and gritty sci-fi anime about giant robots. But Bandai, who basically funded most shows about giant robots, weren't really interested, and they looked at the original designs by Kunio Okawara and said they were basically too boring and they wouldn't be able to make good toys out of them. So basically the compromise they came to was, we'll have your gritty sci-fi program, but you have to make cool looking toys to feature in it, which is part of the history of where Gunpla comes from. So anyway, the show originally was, I think, about 20-something episodes. Unfortunately, it didn't do very well when it first aired. It had pretty low ratings, and it wasn't that successful on television. So Bandai basically cut the funding pretty dramatically towards the end, and they had to basically pull out their bootstraps and do the last couple of episodes pretty much on zero budget. And that was thought to be the end of Gundam. It was just kind of a one-off television sort of series that didn't do that well. But what actually happened after Gundam finished was the Bandai, in a last-ditch effort to kind of recoup some of the money they'd lost on Gundam, released these model kits. Basically, they were Plamo, which is kind of what the Japanese describe as plastic model kits. It's a contraction of plastic and model. And they released these kits of Gundam, the famous titular Gundam unit, the Zaku 2, and some of the other suits like the Gun Tank and the Gun Cannon. And by complete surprise to Bandai and to Sunrise, who are basically the animation company who produced Gundam, the kits ended up selling out like hotcakes, basically. There was massive queues around toy shops in Japan. People couldn't get enough of it. And basically, ironically, the thing that the creators were pretty much opposed to ended up saving the Gundam franchise and making it a commercial success.
It sounds like such a cynical thing that Gundam was basically a TV show made to sell toys to kids, but the way in which Gunpla and all the merch, but especially Gunpla, has kind of become the lifeblood of the continuing legacy is kind of crazy. Like,
yeah.
like, I don't know who. I'm sure there's one person at Bandai responsible who's on a throne built of gold right now.
Gold plastic, probably.
Yeah, with really bad nub marks on it. Well, as a wee Gunpla joke, it's happened. This is the first one.
Yeah.
So, what's Gunpla?
Well, Gunpla, like Jim was saying, Plamo, plastic model. Gunpla's Gundam, plastic model. There are many different types of Gunpla, which we'll get to, but in its most simple form, it is basically the robots from the various animes and mangas made into model kit form, and it's a worldwide phenomenon. Like, serious amounts of money, just in Japan, but even worldwide. So there are a lot of Gundam shows. If you're listening to this, you either have seen a bunch of them, or maybe you haven't seen any, but you'll be aware of some, I'd imagine. The big ones, certainly when I was younger, was Gundam Wing, because they showed it over here on Toonami, on Cartoon Network. And Mobile Suit Gundam, of the original, they showed that over here as well. So you might be familiar, but Mobile Suit Gundam series is the first one, which... This is kind of where things get complicated, because some Gundam series are related, but not all of them. There are different timelines exist within the sort of Gundam multiverse, if you will. And the original Mobile Suit Gundam is part of a timeline called the Universal Century, which spans the last 35 years.
Yeah, this year is actually the 35th anniversary of Gundam. As we said, they started with a 20-episode TV series, which is just called Mobile Suit Gundam. But if you want to get into the shows, you're probably best off actually starting off with the Mobile Suit Gundam movie trilogy. Mm-hmm. So as I was saying just there was a huge demand for Gunpla and Gundam toys, and one of the ways Bandai and Sunrise capitalized on that was by making a trilogy of 3 animated movies about the original Mobile Suit Gundam. About a year or two after the original series was on television. They're basically an abridged version of the TV series. I am quite fond of the original TV series, but it's pretty old. I mean, it is, as we said, 35 years old, and it has some bad animation, some weird storylines, and some pretty terrible robot designs that were basically built to sell toys, like the Zacrello and the Bro and things.
I can't believe we got to Zacrello in episode 1.
Less than 10 minutes and we started talking about Zacrello.
I think the movie trilogy is so good because it really cherry picks the best bits of that original series.
Yeah.
In terms of story and animation. I know a lot of people will tell you different things, but I guess probably our Gunpladust Memories recommendation is to start with the movie trilogy.
Yeah, definitely.
And then have a look at the rest of the Universal Century stuff from there. We'll post some sort of guide. We'll have a Tumblr set up for this. We'll post a guide rather than going into the really kind of deep cuts of the Universal Century. We'll post a kind of suggested watch order. One of the best things to do though is have a look at all the Gundam series. Just you'll be able to find a website that'll have a brief sort of synopsis for all of them. Take a look, and if there's anything you really fancy, then start with that. You don't need to start with our recommendation, but the movie trilogy is good because it gives you an idea of what Gundam is kind of really like, which is angsty teenagers going to war,
teenagers in robots killing people, and crying about it.
Certainly, I mean, like Owen, we recommended that Owen started with the movie trilogy,
and I felt before I watched it that this was probably going to be something that I just had to get through because it's the old original thing, and just to get a grip on what it was about. But I ended up enjoying it a lot more than I thought I would, considering it's from 1979. I thought it was quite brilliant.
We had this chat the other day. I think it's important that people go back and watch these old animes, because I was someone that used to see an old anime and I was like, there's no way that's going to be good. But I mean, it's really good. Some of the best Gundam stuff is from the 80s, especially.
Yeah, definitely. It's kind of got almost like a Seinfeld syndrome, where it's like you watch the original Mobile Suit Gundam and you think, this is good, but it's not amazing. But then you watch things that came before and you realise how many things, even in modern anime today, are basically lifted wholesale from Mobile Suit Gundam.
Yeah, definitely.
Which is pretty cool.
The whole thing's very influential. Of course it would be, look how much money it's made. People want to emulate that.
I wrongly thought that Evangelion was the original teenagers crying. Well, but like that was my only frame of reference, and so when I was going through Gundam, I saw there's people tearing up their bed sheets, and
teenagers have been getting into giant robots since at least 1959.
The good thing about the original Gundam as well is if you're not an anime kind of person, they did the Origin manga series, which is like a recently kind of remade retelling of the original Mobile Suit Gundam, and it's a very, very nice manga.
Yeah, it's
super
gorgeous
nice.
art. I've seen a few pages.
Yeah.
So if that's more your scene, you could always read it. Just don't read the novels because there's some weird stuff happens in the novels.
We'll try not to get into the novels.
Just bag of pubes. That's all we'll say on that.
You want people to get into Gundam. Gunpla. You
It's too early for bag of pubes.
I'm out, guys. Sorry.
But no, you enjoyed the movie trilogy, and then you went straight onto Zeta Gundam, which is the immediate follow-up to...
Which I'm halfway through at the moment, and enjoying very much.
Zeta Gundam's great. One of the best. Like to know that you have to, like you said, not get through the movie trilogy, but you watch the movie trilogy, it's great, and then you're straight on to one of the best Gundam series.
Yeah.
It's like pays off very quickly.
A word of warning is there's also a Zeta Gundam movie trilogy that was released about, I think it was 2007 or 2008. It isn't quite as helpful or as coherent as the original trilogy. It's more just kind of a greatest hits of Zeta Gundam. It's really confusing and weird, even if you've seen the original series.
It's cut with modern animation as well, so it's like it'll go from scenes from 80s animation to mid 2000s animation.
Yeah. It'll skip massive points of stories. Like at one point you'll see a character on Earth chilling out, and then in the very next scene they'll be flying around in a Gundam or a mobile suit, and you'll just be completely lost.
There's a great bit in the first movie where there's a flashback to a scene that's not actually in the movie. It's like what is this? It also has a gacked OP, one of them, I'm sure. So that tells you everything you need to know. Like,
I'm out again.
Bag of pubes and gacked. This is Gundam. This is Gundam, guys.
This is the podcast. So yeah, that's really our recommendation for where to go to get into Gundam. Now, you don't need to get straight into the anime or the manga to build the models, but we'll talk about this more, but a big part of enjoying building the models for me is in building something that you have a connection with from watching it in the anime or reading about it in the manga.
It's quite dangerous because you'll watch a series sometimes and you'll see a mobile suit being a badass and doing lots of cool things, and you'll find yourself alt-tabbing out of your video player onto a Gundam website, browsing for the cheapest prices. So yeah, it can be pretty dangerous, but it's also amazing.
You've got all this ahead of you guys. Get excited.
We kind of set ourselves a soft rule generally that you're not allowed to build something unless you've seen it in the anime, because that can just get wildly dangerous. Gunpla have existed right from the start, but the Gunpla we're going to be talking about are more modern. All made by Bandai. Around about the kind of mid to late 90s, Bandai standardized a lot of their kits.
Basically plastic model kits in Gunpla have existed pretty much since the start. But anything before about the late 1990s, you're going to be putting yourself in for quite a world of hurt, just because this is the thing is, Gunpla's become a lot more accessible in the past decade or two. It's much easier to build. You don't have to paint it. And you don't need specific tools like airbrushes or sanders. Older kits, you're pretty much building it's almost like Airfix. You're basically getting a whole load of plastic, one color, and you're gonna have to color it in yourself and snap it together. But fortunately, Bandai have kind of realized that not everyone's up for that, so the kits now are a lot easier to build. It's a lot of different grades, which we'll go into in a wee bit.
I'll talk about that right now. Actually, there's like you're saying, there's a grading system for different kits. These grades generally relate to the complexity of the model and also the scale. The most popular is high grade. High grade are 1 to 144th scale, which, if you're not familiar with what scale means it's 144th the size of what the actual kit would be if it was real, which is kind of nice. But HGs come in many varieties. There's a different line of HG for every timeline, really. HG-UC, Universal Century, being the most popular, having the most kits. HG kits are great beginner kits because they look great, they're quite easy to build, and they don't really take a lot of skill.
Yeah.
We'll kind of, I guess we'll do some recommendations for what good starting kits would be, but HG is what you're going to run into the
HG's
most.
got a lot of coverage as well. You probably, because they're quite cheap and inexpensive to manufacture, they can make almost any random obscure suit that you think of. There's mobile suits that have been in like about a half minute of footage of one episode of one series, and they have a plastic model kit.
This is one of the things that's like so incredible about Gunpla. I was like, I don't want to be bigging up Bandai here. It's like you've taken so much money off me.
Abusive kind of husband-wife relationship where
with Bandai, no, exactly.
Yeah.
I think it's more kind of Stockholm syndrome
Stockholm
with Bandai. Like. So the good thing about that is that like if you read a manga and there's a suit in it for maybe a minute and you're like, oh, it's an obscure manga and it's an obscure suit, there's a high chance there's going to be a kit because Bandai know what sells, and obscure does sell, I think, as well as kind of the more popular suits. So yeah, HG is what you're going to run into most of the time. There are a few exceptions to the HG rule. There are some 1/100 scale HG Gundam wingsuits from the 90s, which again are good starter kits, but they're slightly bigger. So anything with HG is probably going to be good, but we'll come back to that. The next grade up, which is my personal favourite, is the Master Grade, which is 1/100 scale, so slightly bigger, and they're more based around the concept of an inner frame.
Yeah.
HGs fit together more like a kind of traditional model kit would, whereas a Master Grade has an inner frame, which you build as you go, and basically the armour kind of attaches to the...
Yeah. It's like you're building a little skeleton first.
Yeah. The way the instructions have you build it, it doesn't really feel like you're doing that, but you build an arm, you build the inner frame first, you clip the parts on it, and that's what you can have. This means that one of the big things about Gunpla is the posability.
Yeah.
You can pretty much put a Gundam model into any pose, really, and Master Grade have like incredible posability. They have a lot of joints, a lot of flexibility.
Much more so than the high grade?
Because they have an inner frame, like the knees will bend a lot more than you get on a high grade. They'll generally have more joints.
The more modern a kit is as well, generally better posability.
Yeah.
So I've got a couple of older kits from the 1990s, and pretty much all they can do is hold a gun and shoot a gun and maybe hold their armor up a little bit.
Whereas even on modern Master Grades now, like some of the hands that you get on modern Master Grades are like just completely, they're like this. They have the same posability as a human hand would. They have joints in every place.
Yeah.
Whereas, even some Master Grades, they come with the old hands, so it's kind of a gamble what you're going to get in the box sometimes. But the one thing I'd say about Master Grade is they come with a lot of stuff. Like there's a lot of Master Grade kits have real great gimmicks, because that's one of the great things about Gundam in general is that suits are almost designed to become toys. They're engineered in such a way that suit does a really cool thing, and the model kit does the same thing that the suit does, and that's pretty fast.
Some people will grate against you if you call them toys, but yeah, they pretty much just straight up are just like action figures that you build yourself.
Exactly. I mean,
just have no shame about it and just embrace it.
So a Master Grade might be just a little bit intimidating for a first timer.
Yeah,
if they open up the box and
older Master Grades.
Fingers.
Well, yeah, older Master Grades can be a bit easier to build, but again, it's a bit of a mixed bag. My second kit was a Master Grade and I did fine, but it's just if you're going to get a kit first and you're feeling like you might make a couple of mistakes, it's probably better to do it on a cheaper kit, because Master Grades can be a bit more expensive. We'll talk about prices as well, by the way. Just don't think we're... And it's not bad. We're not saving the prices to £100. It's not that bad, don't worry.
I think you could tackle any grade at any level of experience. It's just how careful you are.
Yeah, that's a good point.
The general rule is the more expensive it is, the more care you'll have to show for the kit. But it's always good. I think starting with a high grade is good because it gives you a chance to get good with the tools as well, because there's an art to clipping and sanding and things like that.
Which takes us nicely on to perfect grade, which is the most expensive grade of Gundam model kits. They're 1/60th scale, so they're big kits.
Practically fly them yourself.
Yeah, exactly. The level of detail they have is pretty ridiculous, and they have like completely accurate inner frames. They sometimes come with LED parts, metal parts. So perfect grades would like make a great kind of centerpiece to a collection. I've not built a perfect grade, so I'm kind of just...
Have you?
No, I haven't. It's something I would like to do at some point. It's just one of the things about perfect grades is they don't come along very often. It's kind of generally, as opposed to high grades where they release pretty much anything. With a perfect grade, it's usually the hero's mobile suit, like the Gundam.
There's only like 10 or
There's
10
only
or
a
so
few. There's
perfect grade.
only a few of them. So I would probably get one if I had a suit that I really loved. But I think Bandai have just announced like a week or two ago the perfect grade Gundam Unicorn with the full armor, which might not mean anything to you, but basically it's a pretty ridiculous, like, it's when at the end of one of the episodes of Gundam, one of the Gundam kits ends up getting ramboed out with like pretty much every machine gun and sword and everything. So that at 160 scale is quite appealing.
It's pretty serious stuff. That'll come with a 30-piece LED kit as well, apparently. So.
Oh yeah,
but that'll probably be a P Bandai exclusive, which we'll talk about because
there's a lot of things we're saying we'll talk about later on.
I know we're just mostly saving our Bandai tirade. We'll get the positivity out of the way, and then we'll try
to draw you in first before we start.
So perfect grade. My problem with perfect grades is for the cost of a perfect grade, you could buy
a little
3 or 4 master grades, 7 or 8 high grades. So I think to take the plunge on a perfect grade, you need to.
So, pretty sure no one's going to be starting on a perfect grade.
No. But for people that like the detail of perfect grade, Bandai have thought of you. Don't worry. Because a few years back, they introduced real grade, which are 1/144th size kits, but arguably with the detail level of perfect grade kits. You won't get the LED stuff with them, but they come with a very complex inner frame.
Yeah.
Lots of stickers, lots of decals, really
it's
high detail.
the closest thing to perfect grade without the...
It's a little tiny perfect grade, which is... It has a lot of fiddliness. You will find yourself crawling around at 2 o'clock in the morning with like a torch trying to find little tiny plastic fingers and joints, but they are really cool.
A terrifying window there into all your futures.
Yep. You'll be having some great fun with your Gunpla. But yeah, the real grade line is probably one of my favourites because I'm quite a fan of 1/144th scale models. And basically every real grade kit that I've bought has been really fantastic. Amazing detail, looks great, and it actually has a really fun build process. This is something that actually I'm quite into about Gunpla. There's almost like an art to the build process of building a kit. So like what parts you build and how you build them. It's actually really fun, and that's actually part of the experience.
There's always a eureka moment with Gunpla.
Yeah,
like you're building a certain part of a kit and you're like, how does this? And then it suddenly all goes together and you realise the kind of the beauty of the design, and it's like...
Some of the like ideas they have for certain features of suits and things like that, some of the ideas they have for implementing them are really cool, and that's actually just as fun as messing about with the kit itself. So
real grade, a good choice for anyone that I'd still say start with a high grade, but if you want something really high detail for less money, because I mean real grade kits are cheap. They're cheaper than master grade kits, and they're super detailed. So it might be a bad first experience because there's a lot of fiddliness and there's a lot of so stickers are. There's a real skill to getting stickers on, especially at that scale. I mean, that's the thing. If there are more advanced techniques in real grade, if you want to get into the more advanced techniques, real grade's a pretty good place to start with that, because you will sweat bullets trying to put these stickers on. Right? It's all worth it. Don't worry. Promise. I really promise. We also have SD, which stands for Super Deformed, which you might be familiar with in general because it's a very Japanese thing.
Oh, like chibi,
like wee guys with big heads. And SD kits, like, and we're going to say everything's great, but SD kits are great because they're inexpensive, they're cute, and they're incredibly fun to build. So I think SD might also be a good starting point. You go and find, if you like cute things, especially your tiny wee Gundams with their big heads, SD kits. I'm sure real everyone nice. Listening likes cute things. I mean, they like us. Newer SD kits as well are great. It won't mean anything to you, but some of the Unicorn SD kits are really nice. One good thing about SD as well is it lets you have some kits that are maybe too big in their actual scale form. So for example, I've got the SD Neo Zeon, which is a ridiculously sized kit, even at 1/144th scale. So having that in SD form means I get a chance to have it without basically having to rent a bigger flat and also pay £160, £200 for it as well. So SD as well might be a great starting point. That's what I'd say. Plus they're cute. Cute is good. SD because the panel pieces are bigger on SD as well, they're real great for practicing more advanced techniques like panel lining and painting. The last kind of Gundam kits you're going to come across are generally referred to as no grade, which means that they don't conform to one of the Bandai standards. Certain series like Gundam 00, for example, has a line of 1/100 kits they don't have a grade. You'd think they were master grade because of the size, but they're actually closer to, they're like sized up high grades. I don't know anyone that generally has an incredible experience with no grade kits.
There's also there's one other grade, but it's so obscure that chances are you probably just been a little bit of a Gundam.
Is it first grade?
Here, I was like, first grade.
First grade.
You need to.
I opted not to mention first grade.
Like. Oh, but yeah,
you have to show your pedigree. So.
I would avoid first grades if you see them. I wouldn't really recommend them.
You might think first grade would be a great beginner kit if you saw one, but it's the kind of thing you're only going to enjoy if you're 6 years old.
Yeah, it's pretty much it's like a Kinder egg.
So I hope someone's listening and they're fucking raging.
No grades are kind of...
just spent like £100 on a bunch of first grade kits. It's all your fault, Barry.
No grade kits are weird for me because some of the suits from Gundam 00 especially that I really like, you can only get 1/100 scale in no grade kits and not as master grades. And that bursts my balls, like, it's annoying, but I'd stay away from no grade. Is what I'd say.
Everyone has their dream kit that doesn't exist yet, and you have to resort to some very heinous stuff to make your dreams come true.
That's our mission statement here at Gunpladust Memories. So yeah, all these different grades of kits, they all have their kind of different pluses and minuses, really, and they're all very different experiences. And if this is a hobby that you seriously want to get into, I'd recommend trying at least one of all of them, because like you were saying, this ain't no Airfix. This isn't like an unpainted Spitfire. One of the things that's so great about Gunpla is how gratifying it is. Like, very little build effort for something that looks really really fucking good.
Definitely.
People will paint their Gunpla kits, but you don't need to. I mean, as time went by, Bandai's color separation for parts has gotten better and better to the point now where you build a real grade and it's like the best iteration of that suit. It just looks so good. Pretty much,
I think, unless you want to do some kind of custom kit, I don't think there's much incentive to paint, or unless you want kind of a finish or something like that. But yeah.
One thing that I will briefly talk about is bootleg.
Bootlegs, yeah, sure.
Because
secret underground.
Totally. Bootlegs, like. If you're going to end up on the blogs, you're going to hear about bootlegs at some point.
Turn off your tape recorders now.
You're going to have to deal with the chat.
Is that the police at the door? Oh shit!
There's all this incredible chat about how bootlegs are made out of carcinogenic plastic that are going to give you cancer. It's like, I got cancer from building bootleg Gunpla. When I say bootleg, there are third-party kits. These can be anything from knockoffs of pre-existing Bandai kits to things like resin conversion kits for pre-existing models, and then just full-on resin model kits that have been like professionally cast by a third-party model company. But
so these are basically any Gunplas that come in a box that doesn't have the Bandai logo on them.
Correct.
And they're not. It's not even a kind of. I've spoken to people about this before. It's not even a case of you have to be discerning. Usually the bootleggers are very open about the fact that it's not official Bandai. Like, they won't even try to mimic the Bandai box art. I think to avoid getting themselves sued to fuck, basically. It's usually pretty obvious which is a bootleg and which is a Bandai.
There's an upside to bootleg in that if you're a more experienced modeler, you can get some Bandai kits much cheaper than Bandai make them. But because some of the kits... some of the TT Hongley kits, for example, they don't seem to be recreations of the mold. They just seem to be reverse molded from the parts. Which means that you get a lot of flash, which is plastic overspill in the mold on parts. So you need to be pretty good with a knife. I built an Endless Waltz Death Scythe, which it was a bootleg made by a company called Dragon Momoko, and it was one of the hardest kits I've ever had to build. And it looks great, and it only cost me £15, and it's a master grade, but it was incredibly difficult to build. And even now I can't pose it because so many parts are glued because it just kept falling to pieces.
Death Sight by Dragon Momoko. Was this during your heavier days?
This was like a few months back.
Death Scythe by Death of Chinese Factory Workers, you fucking evil bastard.
Oh, jeez.
You've taken a turn here.
If you can afford Bandai, always get Bandai because it's going to be the best. But here's when bootlegs can be cool, because some bootleggers have taken the initiative and have started building kits that Bandai haven't even made yet.
Hence the reference to heinous steps you might have to take.
Exactly, and that's good for everyone. I think it's good for Bandai. I mean, like for example, Dragon Momoko put out a kit last year, and Bandai are now putting out the same kit. Because they caught up a year later, but unfortunately, there's a thing called P Bandai, which is basically premium Bandai items that you can only really get if you're in Japan. It's like
sold in shops. Like
it's online. I think
it's mostly online. Yeah, you have to have an account with P Bandai, and you have to be. I think generally they only ship to Japan. So if you want a P Bandai item, you're pretty much at the mercy of some guy in Japan who's going to add a couple £100, usually on top of
I see.
whatever you want for it, which is unfortunate. So they're pretty highly sought after things.
So, I mean, people in Japan, I don't imagine there's any need for bootlegs in Japan because people can get real Gunpla cheap.
Just walk into a shop anywhere.
Exactly, but certainly, I mean, if there was a kit you really wanted and you could only get it as a bootleg, then why the fuck not? Because Bandai don't care about you, Western listener.
You're gonna get us shut down.
The Bandai police. So this takes us nicely on to the actual models themselves. So we've got a high grade here with us.
You can hear it on the mic.
You hear that plastic?
Yep, I'm moving his little arm back and forth.
That's a leg.
Oh shit! I'm very much a Gundam super fan, ladies and gentlemen.
The way a model kit works is if you've ever seen a model kit, you'll understand what happens. You have a thing called a sprue, which has all the parts on it. The parts are attached to the sprue via things called gates, and you take the parts off using a pair of nippers, which is something you're going to want to pick up if you're going to get into this. So you nip the part off, you have a thing called a gate mark, which we will refer to as nubs.
Yeah.
And if you want your kit to look good, nubs either need to be sanded off. You're a sanding man.
I'm a sander man.
I'm a filer man.
Sandman.
You can file or sand them off. And then that's it, the parts just clip together, no glue required.
Yeah.
So tools wise, I mean, that was the first surprise for me when, the first surprise was that you have to build the models, because I'd seen Gundam models on shelves and thought, I wouldn't mind getting one of those. And then, of course, I'm told, well, you got to build them. So, and the second thing was knowing that I'd have to get some supplies to help me build them. Like I don't just get a box of parts that I slot together.
Yeah.
So for a beginner, what would you recommend they tool up with?
In terms of tools, I think a set of nippers, a hobby knife, a cutting mat, obviously, because you're going to be doing a lot of cutting.
Yeah, you don't want to mess up your table.
And some kind of sanding or filing utensil, like just a fine grain nail file or a fine grain sander. I've got what's called a sanding sponge. It's used in hobbycraft quite a lot. It's basically just a big bit of sponge with a kind of textured surface, and it's quite useful because rather than having a little sheet of sandpaper that you always end up losing, you have a sponge that you can wash off and clean, and it's really useful. Okay. And that's all stuff you can get really cheaply, pretty much in any kind of hobby shop. I usually use places like Hobbycraft, Paper Chase, and there's a place, it's not that common, you can find it in most cities, it's called Model Zone, and they're quite good as well. They usually sell pretty much anything you would need.
So any shop that sells Airfix sort of stuff would have
Airfix
it.
again, yeah.
But that would be a good place
Just
to get it.
Denny, when you're in there, just resist the urge to pick up a Spitfire.
Spitfire or like one of those train sets or something.
So yeah, I mean, the basics are really anything you can get from any model shop, so it's just that stuff, and that's really everything you need to build.
Pretty cheap as well. I think that would only set you back like a tenner to get
And
base.
that's you set then for the rest of your Gunpla career, I suppose.
Pretty much.
The thing you'll be struck with when you start building a kit is that all the instructions are in Japanese, but don't worry about it because you're never actually reading any of the text.
Yeah.
There's a couple of really good Gunpla guides online which we'll post a link to. If you just read through that, it'll in the instruction manual there are symbols, which, they're not Japanese, or they're just wee picture symbols, and they'll explain certain things like this has to be done on both sides kind of thing. So there's a guide there, and that'll explain all the symbols.
If you've ever built an IKEA shelf, you'll be very comfortable.
Yes.
So very much image-based
Yes,
guidelines.
you never have to read the text. Although, sometimes when you buy a bootleg kit, you find that the Japanese has been translated into English, which is always
Beautiful.
incredibly
And
good.
sometimes there's a bit of backstory for the suit as well, which has been translated, and you get some incredible
So
English
good.
translations.
You've sold me on these bootlegs.
I feel like we're pushing the bootlegs too much.
Get on the phone to Hongli or TT, just be like,
Guys.
"Where's our Yan?"
So beyond that, I mean, once you got your tools and you've had a read through the guide to make sure you understand the instruction manual, you're pretty much good to go. Beyond that, there are some slightly more advanced techniques, which we'll briefly talk about. The first of these is panel lining, which is a very, very simple step you can take to make your great looking kit look even better. And basically it is you buy a pen, a Gundam marker. Gundam make a whole different range of markers, a whole bunch of colours. If you're building a white suit, I'd say pick up a grey one. If you're building any other colour suit, pick up a black one. And basically all you're doing is filling in all the wee detail lines.
All right.
Colouring in, pretty much.
Basically you're just, if there's anything that
Give
looks...
it a
colouring in
more-
your toys with big pens.
Yeah, it gives it a more cartoon kind of
Yeah.
look, which is nice. The way that works, you'll need to do it a couple times to get the hang of it, but like you'll fill in a wee line and you get a cotton swab and then just like kind of dab off the excess.
I
and
presume
have a
you
nice
do
line.
this before assembling it.
I do
to
it
make
as
it.
I'm assembling.
Yeah.
It depends. You can panel line the entire thing, but
Yeah.
when your kit's built, you're never going to see the inner frame. So
Yeah. Most Gunpla kits are built in such a way that they can come apart very easily anyway.
Yeah.
So if you like the look of your kit and then you're like, oh, I wish I'd done this or done that, it's very easy to disassemble it into its components and
Right.
make any changes.
panel lining, like I'll stress again, it's something that will need practice. But it instantly makes your kits look much, much better once you get the hang of it. You can also get Gundam paint markers, where if you maybe want to do a couple of bits, your own kind of colour, or you have some nice ideas for it, but you don't feel comfortable using brushes or an airbrush, paint markers are kind of a middle ground between the two. And these are just like, you see I've got one here, it's a big kind of chunky silver marker, and all it does is draw silver paint onto parts, which can be good for detailing stuff on kits, but again, not necessary. You can also buy a Gundam eraser marker, which will rub out any bad panel lining you may have done. The good thing about panel lining is if you mess it up, you can even take rubbing alcohol and it'll take the ink off. So
That's a really good thing about Gunpla generally, is it's very difficult to make a permanent, irrevocable mistake unless you like take a hammer to your kits and just start smashing it.
Yeah, that was a fear putting me off originally. Was, I mean, the idea of buying a kit and trying to put it together and something snapping or
I'm a total ham hands and I've broken little pieces and been able to fix it, no problem. I've made like fairly big mistakes and still been able to recover, no problem. And it's actually, sometimes that could be part of the fun, is like coming up with a solution to one of your own fuck ups, basically.
no, you're right.
but the likelihood of that stuff is it's not.
Get a cool little battle scar. There's an infamous picture you'll probably find online of a guy whose Zaku got eaten by a dog, and he basically converted it into a cool kind of like battle damaged Zaku and added like cool little, like basically the teeth marks became bullet holes and things like that. It actually led to a much cooler looking kit. So
I can only picture lots of Gunpla fans throwing their Gunpla at their dogs, hopes to do their own.
Beyond panel lining, there are sort of more low-level advanced techniques, things like top coating.
yeah.
But I mean, we can save that for another podcast. If it's something that someone was interested in, then maybe we could cover it in future.
I was going to ask, what was that?
Do you want
But
to
now,
know?
no, I'll
that's a
I'll
good-
listen to the next one.
Okay.
Oh, a nice cliffhanger. Read it on
You're
the next
bullying
episode.
us again. And beyond just the kind of stickers, there are water slides, which you'll be familiar with if you've ever built a Warhammer kit, and dry decals as well. But again, that's kind of more advanced stuff, so we can certainly cover that in future if it's something you would like covered. So I guess that's it. I mean, that's really all you need to get started with your first kind of Gundam model kit. So I guess now this would be a good time for us to talk about what you should start with and where you can get it.
This is no Zaku, boy! No Zaku!
That thing's got more armor and more power than a Zaku. It's completely different.
So you've got all your wee tools, you're ready to... You've watched the movie trilogy, you're ready to let Gundam into your life, but where do you buy Gundam kits? Well, there are a few places, and I'm sure everyone has their preferred methods, but Jim, where do you get your kits from?
It really depends on the kit. For the most part, basically one thing you're going to have to be really aware of before you start buying Gundam kits is the dreaded customs notice that comes through the mail, usually a week or two after your kit's arrived, charging you 40-50 quid because you've imported massive big boxes into the UK. So one thing to always be conscious of when you're buying Gunpla is where you're buying it from, so where the seller is located. It's generally, if you're based in the UK, as I assume most listeners would be, but maybe not, but try and buy from a seller based in the country that you're in, both because you're going to probably get the best conversion rates and you're also going to avoid customs fees and probably get it shipped to you a bit faster as well.
In the UK, we have Japan Cool.
Yeah.
Are a site that sell Gunpla. Little more expensive than you might find elsewhere, but again, the big difference is you're going to get it quickly. Very
quickly, and also they use a courier who deliver on Sundays as well, which was really totally took me by surprise. One Sunday morning, was sitting in bed, enjoying a bit of breakfast, and then I get a buzz at the door, and there you go. It's Gunpla on a Sunday morning. How amazing
breakfast
is that?
in bed, though? Are we just going to let that go by?
Having just a big stack of toast crumbs all over the covers.
It's not quite as glamorous as I was thinking.
Just
toast dust memories.
Japan Cool are really cool, and also one thing they do that not a lot of places do in my experience is if you message them directly and ask for a certain kit that they don't have in the stock, they'll actually go to the effort of importing it for you, which is really cool. And it's good if you want something that's quite obscure that you can't get your hands on otherwise. I'd also try another UK seller called Gundam Mad, kind of similar to Japan Cool in terms of price and selection. They've been operating a bit longer. Japan Cool's quite a new business, but Gundam Mad's been around a bit longer. And they're both pretty good. I'd say Japan Cool maybe ship a little bit faster, but to be honest, it's not that bad, really. And good prices again as well. Aside from that, I would probably quite often I use an eBay seller called Tokyo Hobby. It's basically a store, but it's based on eBay, and they sell kits for quite cheap. It's like coming from a little bit further away. I think they're based in Hong Kong, but they take care of customs ahead of time for you, so that you basically don't have to take the brunt of the fee when it arrives in the
basically,
UK.
Since I started buying Gunpla, the two main sellers I've used is J3 Hobby on eBay, who are a Korean-based seller, and Tokyo Hobby. The good thing about them is their kits are basically, that's the cheapest you're going to find kits is from those two sellers. The downside is you'll have to wait a bit longer, but you won't have to pay import tax. I've never had to pay import tax with either of those sellers, either because they've taken care of it themselves or they've done that really cool thing where you mark it as a lower customs value than it actually is. The thing to be aware of, the thing to be aware of is anything over £15 coming into the country, you're going to have to pay import duty on. And the import duty is only VAT, but the big problem is you're paying Royal Mail handling fees, which can be
robbery,
just anything.
Basically.
They just basically make up a number. So that's the ones I'd really recommend. Tokyo Hobby, J3 Hobby.
There are others as well. If you need to go a little bit more obscure, or you need something
bit older, maybe.
A bit older,
Hobby Like Japan.
Hobby Like Japan, but they used to be a little bit nicer with the custom stuff, but now they pretty much are completely honest.
They'll
with
use EMS now mostly.
You're going to get ripped.
EMS is a quick courier, but it's a legit courier, which means you're definitely going to get hammered on import charges.
1999.co.jp is really nice as well. But that's an actual Japanese website, so you'll need to get your Google Translate out to get the fields translated. But they do auctions, which is kind of interesting. If you see a kit you like, you might be able to get it a bit cheaper than usual if you actually get into a bidding war with some kid in Kyoto or somewhere like that.
I had a really great experience with Tokyo Hobby recently. The episode 7 Rose and Zulu that came out, ordered that the day it came out in Japan. They had it on their store and it showed up 11 days later. And awesome. I got a wee free HG Builders parts thing with it. So there are really good sellers out there. You'll have a bit of a mixed experience. Sometimes I think one of the things ordered from Tokyo Hobby got lost in the post. My BB Neo Xeon got lost.
Rest in peace.
I know. And now that kit's like 40 quid. I got it for 14 quid shipped. It got lost in the post, and now I'm never going to own it. But yeah, I mean, if you can find a cheap eBay seller, it's good to experiment with cheap kits and see if you're going to get charged import tax or not. But that's any hobby at all where you're into Japanese stuff. That's your biggest enemy, really, is import duty. But
generally the rule of thumb is if something comes out in Japan, you're probably going to have to wait about a month before you actually have it in your hands. Just because
Yeah.
it's quite a convoluted process.
Or you can do what me and Jim do, and we're going to go to Japan and fill our suitcase with really cheap Gunpla. Yeah. Owen as well, actually. Well, this is if we've managed to fully convert you by that time.
I don't know. I think you're working your magic pretty well.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's basically, the best places to buy. You can get Gundam markers that I mentioned. You can get them from all these sellers too. There's also, you can buy a lot of accessories for your kits, things like action bases. If you want to maybe do an more exciting mid-air pose with your Gunpla, you buy a wee action base for it, and it just basically holds it up in the air, and you can link them together. You make them have wee fights on their wee action bases.
You get things like effect parts as well. So if you have a Gundam who's doing a cool punch and you want to make it look like the punch is on fire, you can get like a little bit of plastic fire, stick it on.
And as always, there are third parties making add-on parts for existing kits, more decals for existing kits. Yeah. There's some really great stuff on eBay, especially, because that's less of it's a bit more of a Badlands eBay. And if you want to go for the super Badlands, AliExpress, which is like the kind of big, it's like Alibaba.com, it's like the big Chinese eBay, that's like total Badlands. You get anything you want on there, mate. You can get papercraft Gundam models on there if you want.
So, no more dodging the question. How much are we talking about here?
Well, different grades are obviously going to set you back slightly different amounts. You can pick up a high grade kit for between sort of £10 and £20 is the average.
There are exceptions though. For example, if you pick an absolute monster like the Sazabi, you might have to pay a little bit extra, maybe £5-10 more, but that's simply because it's an absolute massive kit, so that's understandable.
So generally, you'll pick up an HG between £10 and £20 shipped, which is good. Master grades tend to run from about, let's say, 30 to 40. Again, there are exceptions. Older ones will be cheaper. Stuff like, again, Sazabi, it's just like every iteration of the Sazabi is incredibly expensive, but you're generally looking £30 to £40 shipped for a master grade. Perfect grade are really £100 up. The most surprising is real grade. When you consider everything we told you about real grade, you can get most of the real grade kits for around £20 shipped. So very, very good price option there. And SD kits run anywhere from, again, about 10 to 20
I picked up an SD kit in London last week for £4, so you can really, there's a lot of variants.
There you go.
But they're pretty simple. So
hopefully that's not scared anyone off. Hopefully people are pleasantly surprised by the cost of these.
I'm pleasantly surprised.
That's dangerous though.
Thought I heard a girl's name. But that kid looks like a boy. But that kid looks like a boy. But that kid looks like a boy. But that kid looks like a boy.
So, you want to get a kit? Sound, you need to get into the anime. How are you going to do that? Are you going to buy expensive Blu-rays? No, not here, not at Gunpladust Memories. You will be becoming very familiar with nya.se, as I'm sure you might already be familiar. But, if you got the money and you want to buy the Blu-rays, there are some real good Blu-rays out there.
There are, before you load up your torrent client as well, there are some Bandai endorsed and Sunrise endorsed legal ways of watching Gundam as well.
Yes.
If you go search for Gundam Info on YouTube, that's an official Gundam YouTube channel that periodically, it seems like seasonal. Every season it'll put up a different old Gundam TV show and a different old Gundam movie with subs of decent quality, and you can watch that on YouTube completely for free and guilt-free as well, because you're not stealing from poor Tomino and his pals.
Poor Tomino, the poor laddie. But we will be getting a friend of the show, Heat Phoenix, Mr. Zachariah Vander, whatever. Vanderbeige will be writing us up a wee suggested watch order for the Universal Century stuff. We'll also include links to torrents there as well. And if you're not the kind of person that wants to torrent, then you'll be able to go and find DVDs, Blu-rays here and there.
There's one good thing is pretty much every mainline Gundam series has been released on Blu-ray and been remastered as well. So you'll be able to watch it in 720p or 1080p goodness. Even if the animation itself isn't great, it'll be nice and clean, which is really nice.
Well, the Turn A Gundam Blu-rays are coming out very soon, and they look very, very nice. This is something that we always say about Gundam, is if you're a Gundam fan, every day is a big news day.
Yeah.
Like every day there's a new kit announced, there's a new manga, a new anime, a new Blu-ray or DVD release announced.
Yeah, it's just such a huge franchise. Like even for me, self-describing as a super fan, but there's still series and manga and other media that I haven't actually consumed yet, despite being into Gundam for nearly a decade.
I know
really
I
cool.
know that there's manga that I will never even get to just because there's so much of it, which it takes us nicely on to why we like Gundam and Gunpla so much. I mean, I'm still relatively new to it. I mean, it's only about a year, just over a year since I bought my first Gundam kit, and like I said, when I was younger, I'd seen stuff like Mobile Suit Gundam, Gundam Wing, a wee bit of similar stuff, G Gundam and that. But I mean, really, since getting into it, it's become like such an incredible hobby. I think the reason I like the model kit so much is because for me personally, it's a really great way to de-stress. If you are kind of stressful, I'm sure you can know how hard it is to focus sometimes. And I think building a model kit's a great way to refocus your concentration.
Yeah, I do like sitting with a podcast or a bit of music and just working my way through a kit. There are times where you'll be taking absolute mental maddies and like throwing pieces of plastic all over the room. But for the most part, it is a very kind of zen hobby where you're focusing completely on building something and bringing it together. And eventually at the end, you've got a really cool product.
Especially like, oh shit, sorry. We can leave that in. It's like, oh, they've got mech sound effects. It's so cool. I've said it before, but it's so great to build a suit that you've become attached to from watching the series. Like I've built, like, my favourite suit changes all the time, but I've built most of my favourite suits, and it's always been a great experience.
I also like the idea of having basically a toy on your shelf, but instead of a sad reminder that you're refusing to accept adulthood.
It can be that sometimes as well.
But it's like you have made it. It's something that you've done instead of something that you've just bought and taken out of a box. It's something that you have made to a certain point.
Definitely.
When you said earlier about how you didn't realise that you had to build the kits, but you don't have to get kits if you like Gundam but don't really have the time or the patience to build model kits. Bandai make a line of essentially action figures called Robot Damashi, which again, quite a wide selection there.
Robot Damashi, it's fairly new. It's basically a line of 1/144th scale action figures. Generally 144th. There are some exceptions, but basically they are Gundam and other mecha animes figures. And they're really cool, really detailed, and really they're famous for having exceptional kind of posability, and they come with loads of accessories. They have something called the hardpoint system, which means that little guns and swords and backpacks that you pick up in one kit can be transferred and used in a different kit as well. So if you like the Gundam's shield, you can give it to the Zaku, or if you have some grenades and you want to stick them on a Zeta Gundam, you can do that. And they're really good. They are a little bit more expensive than just getting the high grade or the real grade kits. They're usually, in our money, about 40 quid-ish. But they're really worth it. I have a couple myself. And there are really good alternatives to high grades. The selection isn't that broad because it's still fairly new. But you can get most of the famous Gundam and enemy.
Quite a few niche ones too.
Yeah. But they're a really good alternative if you don't really fancy building the kits yourself.
It's a really great hobby, I'd say. The amount of, I mean, I guess we've made friends over our love of Gundam. I mean, there are a lot of people on Twitter that we have our wee Gundam Clubhouse on Twitter, that's a lot of fun.
Definitely want to join in the Gundam Clubhouse bands.
Totally, we'll post all our Twitters on the blog, so you can add all as hashtag Gundam Clubhouse types. We can have a nice wee chat about Gunpla. But it's just a great hobby. I mean, I used to be really into building Lego and stuff. But I think you reach a certain age where it's like Lego's kind of fun in that, but it's just putting blocks together. Whereas building a model, and again, building a model kit is fine, but if you're building like a U-boat or something, it's like, yeah. But like, I think
I'd rather have fictional weapons of war than real ones.
Exactly. It's like, I want to build a model kit that's piloted by an angsty teenager. That's exactly what I want, and that's what Gundam is. It's the model kits are great, the anime is great, and it really, for me, creates a full package of something that I just really fucking love.
Yeah, ditto to that.
And that's about all we have time for on episode 1 of Gunpladust Memories. Will there be an episode 2? Who knows?
Well, we still need to find out about top coating.
We do. The top coat special will be coming soon. If you like our podcast, please let us know. If you'd like to be on our podcast as well, let us know. Because I think it'd be a pretty good system for us to have a guest on every time who was maybe a beginner or an intermediate, or I mean, we know people that are way better at building Gunpla than us.
Really, we shouldn't be hosting this podcast at all.
Oh, guys.
We'll post some links to like all the guides I've been talking about. We'll post the links to all those on the Tumblr, and I'll post a link to some blogs as well. Because, like I said, every day is a news day where Gundam's concerned. So you get on the blogs, you have a look at all those lovely, lovely kits. But yeah, we'll keep you updated. And I mean, if there's anything at all in the meantime, any questions, or even if you just want to chat about Gundam or Gunpla, just drop us a line on Twitter. You can get me at No Stopping Epoch.
You can get me at Let's Hug Bro.
And if you want to see how I'm coming along,
check in on Owen's burgeoning addiction.
At MegaGamezilla. And I'd just like to extend a thank you to you both for
no, not at all.
Oh,
breaking me in.
Well, it's kind of like a kind of drug dealer relationship. We're giving you your first dose for free, but you'll be coming back in a couple of
You're
months.
going to have lungs full of gunpla dust pretty soon, man.
And I think it's great as well when people make things like this, because when you have a niche interest, I think as long as it's not a crime, then I think people should talk about their niche interests.
What about if it's a crushing fetish?
So that's exactly the kind of thing I'm talking about. But yeah, if you've got an interest like this, a passion, I think it's always great when people try to encourage others, even just to know about it, and in a positive way, because
mostly positive for now. Find out in a couple.
Yeah, I also want to hear episode 2, the big Bandai
expose. Everyone needs a hobby, and this is a great hobby. This is a real good hobby.
Yeah.
Sorry, YouTube blocks the music on copyright grounds, so instead of that, you just get me saying this. And now it's over. Bye.